Commander Thexus sat in his observation chair aboard the Galactic Survey Corps ship, watching the stars drift past the viewing port. His 4 arms worked efficiently across multiple control panels, logging data from yet another unremarkable star system. This was his 17th survey rotation, and the work had become routine. Most systems contained nothing but empty rocks and frozen gas giants. His junior officer, a young female named Plix, chirped from her station. "Commander, I'm detecting something unusual on the 4th planet in this system." Thexus barely looked up. Unusual readings were common and usually meant nothing more than unexpected mineral deposits or odd atmospheric conditions. What kind of readings? Energy signatures. Strong ones. Multiple concentrated sources across the surface. That got his attention. Thexus brought up the planetary data on his main screen, and his secondary hearts began beating faster. The planet designated GC 7743 glowed bright red across every single hazard indicator. He had never seen so many warnings on one display. The atmospheric pressure reading showed 2.3 times standard pressure. That alone would crush a Vreen's delicate respiratory system. The gravity measured at 1.4 times galactic standard, enough to cause bone deterioration in most species within months. Surface temperatures ranged from -40 degrees to +65 degrees. Such extreme swings would be fatal to the cold-blooded Quillan people and cause organ failure in heat-sensitive Bendari. The preliminary scans revealed even worse horrors. Constant electrical storms raged across the surface with enough power to disable starship shields. The indigenous life forms included creatures massing over 12 tons with natural armor plating. Airborne spores in the atmosphere carried neurotoxins. Seismic sensors detected frequent earthquakes that would flatten most standard colony structures. This was a Class 15 Deathworld, the absolute highest danger classification. No known intelligent species could survive on such a planet. It was scientific fact. Every environmental parameter exceeded the maximum tolerance levels for all 47 member species of the Galactic Council. "Commander," Plix said nervously, "those energy readings are not natural. They show patterns consistent with power generation and distribution networks." Thexus felt his scales ripple with confusion. "That's impossible. Run a full diagnostic on all sensor systems. The equipment must be malfunctioning." Plix worked at her console for several minutes while Thexus stared at the impossible data. Finally she looked up. "All systems functioning normally, Commander. I'm deploying reconnaissance probes now." The probes launched from the ship and descended toward the deadly planet below. Thexus watched their telemetry with growing anxiety. The probe's heat shields glowed red-hot as they punched through the thick atmosphere. Lightning strikes hammered their protective fields. Powerful winds threatened to tear them apart. One probe lost signal briefly when a particularly violent gust sent it tumbling, but it stabilized and continued its descent. The first images began streaming back to the ship. Thexus leaned forward, his multiple eyes widening in disbelief. Plix made a small gasping sound. Buildings, thousands of them, organized into clear patterns with streets running between them like veins. The structures were solid and well-maintained, not the ruins of some extinct civilization. These buildings were active and occupied. The probes flew lower, capturing more detail. Power lines connected the buildings. Vehicles moved along the streets. Agricultural fields spread out in neat rows on the outskirts of the settlement. The city appeared to be thriving, with a population the sensors estimated at approximately 50,000 individuals. "This cannot be real," Thexus whispered. "No species can live on a Class 15 world. The physics do not allow it." Plix adjusted her sensors and went very still. "Commander, I'm intercepting radio transmissions from the surface. Audio signals. They're communicating with each other." "Play it," Thexus ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life. Voices filled the air, speaking in clear, organized patterns. The translation matrix analyzed the language structure and compared it against the database of all known languages in the galaxy. A match appeared on the screen almost instantly. Terran Standard. Humans. Thexus felt his blood run cold. Humans were the newest species to join galactic society, having made first contact only 3 years ago. They were strange creatures, bipedal and soft-skinned, but they had seemed reasonably intelligent and had been welcomed into the Galactic Council with the usual diplomatic protocols. But humans living on a Class 15 Deathworld? It was beyond comprehension. Their own homeworld, Earth, had been classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, which had shocked everyone during initial surveys. Most civilized species evolved on gentle worlds with stable climates and reasonable gravity. A Class 12 world was already considered extraordinarily hostile. But this planet was even worse. 3 full classification levels more deadly than Earth. And somehow, impossibly, humans had not only landed here but had built an entire city and were living their daily lives as if it were perfectly normal. Plix looked at Thexus with wide eyes. "What do we do, Commander?" Thexus made his decision quickly. "Send all data immediately to Galactic Council headquarters. Priority emergency channel. They need to see this right away. And keep monitoring those transmissions. I want to know everything about that settlement." As his crew worked frantically around him, Thexus stared at the images of the impossible city on the deadly world below. Everything he knew about biology, physics, and survivability told him this should not exist. Yet there it was, real and undeniable. Humans had achieved something no other species had even attempted. The question that burned in his mind was simple but terrifying. If humans could survive here, what else were they capable of? The emergency session chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 47 different species filled the vast circular room, some standing on the floor, others floating in specialized gravity fields, and a few attending through holographic projection from their distant homeworlds. All eyes focused on the massive display screen showing images of the impossible human city. Commander Thexus stood at the central podium, his 4 arms gesturing toward the data streaming across multiple screens. He had spent the last 3 days preparing this presentation, checking and rechecking every fact because he knew how unbelievable it would sound. "Honored members of the Council," he began, his voice amplified through the chamber's speakers, "what you are seeing should not exist according to every scientific principle we understand about biology and survivability." He brought up the first set of data. "The planet humans call New Queensland has an atmospheric pressure of 2.3 times our standard measurement. For context, this pressure would cause the Bendari people's lung structures to collapse within 6 hours. The Vreen would experience fatal compression in less than 3 hours." Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Thexus continued. "The gravity measures 1.4 times standard. Prolonged exposure to such gravity causes bone deterioration, muscle failure, and circulatory collapse in most species. The Quillen delegation will remember the tragic loss of their survey team on the Class 9 world designated Heptus Prime, which had only 1.2 times standard gravity." Several Quillen representatives clicked their mandibles in somber agreement. Dr. Rex Lynn, the Council's chief xenobiologist, slithered to a secondary podium. His tentacles coiled and uncoiled nervously as he spoke. "The biological hazards are even more concerning than the physical ones. The indigenous flora produces airborne spores that contain Class 3 neurotoxins. We tested these spores in our laboratory. They caused paralysis in Arconian tissue samples within minutes and complete cellular breakdown in Vreen samples within an hour." He pulled up images of the planet's wildlife. The chamber filled with gasps and alarmed sounds as a massive creature appeared on screen. It looked like something from a nightmare, with thick armored plating covering its body and massive jaws capable of crushing metal. "This is one of the smaller predators," Rex Lynn said quietly. "It masses approximately 12 metric tons. Its bite force exceeds that of our industrial presses. Its hide can deflect standard plasma weapons. There are 17 documented species on this planet that could destroy an armored vehicle. The humans have named them things like thunder lizards and spikebacks as if they were common pets." Council Speaker Vorthan, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns, raised one of his geometric appendages. "Surely the humans must live in sealed habitats with extensive life support systems?" Before Thexus could answer, the chamber doors opened. The human delegation entered, and every being in the room turned to watch them. Ambassador Robert Blake led the group, a tall human male with gray hair at his temples and lines around his eyes that suggested either age or stress. Beside him walked Director Emma Wright, a female with sharp features and calculating eyes, and Colonial Representative James Harper, whose muscular build looked even more pronounced in the chamber's reduced gravity. Blake approached the speaker's platform with confident strides. "Honored council members," he said with a slight bow, "I apologize for our dramatic entrance. We came as soon as we received the emergency summons." "Ambassador Blake," Vorthan said, his crystalline voice chiming like bells, "we have just learned that your species has established a colony on one of the most hostile planets ever discovered. We need to understand how this is possible." Blake smiled, and something about that smile made Thexus uncomfortable. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that others did not. "The planet you've designated GC-7743 is indeed one of our colonies. We call it New Queensland. It was settled approximately 12 standard years ago. The primary settlement, Port Defiance, currently has a population of 52,117 citizens as of last month's census. 52,000, Rexlin repeated faintly. Living on a Class 15 Deathworld. Emma Wright stepped forward. Port Defiance is actually quite pleasant. We have residential neighborhoods, commercial districts, schools for our children, 3 hospitals, numerous parks and recreational facilities, and last year we opened a museum of local natural history. The settlement has a positive birth rate exceeding the death rate. People are choosing to have families there. But the conditions, Thexus protested. The pressure, the gravity, the storms, the predators, the toxic atmosphere are manageable, James Harper interrupted. His voice was deep and calm. We use flexible architecture that can withstand the seismic activity. Our buildings are designed to ground the electrical storms safely. We've established safe zones for agriculture and livestock. The local predators are dangerous certainly, but they're also predictable. You learn their patterns and adjust accordingly. Adjust accordingly? Dr. Rexlin's tentacles writhed in agitation. You speak of apex predators that could tear through our strongest military vehicles as if they were minor inconveniences. Blake's expression became more serious. Dr. Rexlin, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding here. What you classify as a death world is, from our perspective, simply a frontier colony. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it requires certain precautions. But humans have been living in hostile environments for our entire evolutionary history. It's what we do. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species demanded that humans be barred from colonizing any more dangerous worlds. Others argued that the humans must be using unknown technology that they were hiding from the Council. A few suggested that the humans were somehow genetically engineered superbeings rather than a naturally evolved species. Vorthan's crystalline body flashed bright colors, a signal for silence. This situation is unprecedented. We require more information. I propose that we send an official inspection team to this new Queensland to verify these claims and understand how human survival is possible. Thexus found himself speaking before he could think. I volunteer to lead the inspection team. Blake nodded. We welcome an inspection. Transparency is important. We'll assign Captain Margaret Cole as your liaison officer. She served on New Queensland for 6 years and knows the colony well. As the session ended and representatives filed out, still arguing among themselves, Thexus found Blake approaching him. Commander Thexus, Blake said quietly, a word of advice before you visit New Queensland. The people there are what we call frontier colonists. They're proud of what they've built and proud of their ability to thrive in difficult conditions. Try not to act too shocked by what you see. They might take it the wrong way. Take it the wrong way? Thexus asked. Blake's smile returned. They might think you're insulting their home. Retrike. The inspection team's shuttle shook violently as it descended through New Queensland's atmosphere. Commander Thexus gripped his safety restraints with all 4 arms while his stomach churned in ways he had never experienced before. Lightning bolts the size of buildings struck their shields every few seconds, making the entire craft ring like a struck bell. The winds tossed them sideways so hard that Thexus thought they might tumble out of control. Dr. Rexlin had turned a sickly shade of pale green. His tentacles wrapped around every available surface, and his eyes were squeezed shut. The other 3 team members looked equally terrified. Captain Margaret Cole sat across from them, reading something on her datapad as if she were sitting in a peaceful library. She was a lean human female with skin darkened by sun exposure and striking blue eyes. Her uniform was simple and light, with no visible protective gear. First time on a frontier world, Commander? She asked without looking up. Thexus tried to answer, but another violent shake made his words come out as a strangled sound. Cole glanced up and smiled slightly. The atmospheric turbulence is a bit rough this season, she said. But don't worry. Pilot Davis has made this run about 800 times. He knows what he's doing. A massive lightning strike hit them directly, and every alarm in the shuttle started screaming. Thexus was certain they were about to die. That was a big one, Cole commented casually, making a note on her datapad. The shuttle finally broke through the worst of the storm clouds, and Port Defiance appeared below them. Thexus had seen the images, but seeing it with his own eyes felt different. The city sprawled across a river valley with buildings arranged in organized patterns. Green spaces dotted the landscape. On the outskirts, he could see fields of crops growing in neat rows. They landed at a facility clearly built to accommodate alien visitors. The team went through decontamination procedures and emerged wearing full environmental suits. Their life support systems hummed with power, running double redundant backups because nobody trusted a single system on a world this hostile. Captain Cole met them at the exit wearing cargo pants, boots, and a thin jacket that looked more suitable for a pleasant day than a deadly planet. "Temperature is nice today," she said cheerfully. "Only 32 degrees. Bit warm for my taste actually." Dr. Rex Lynn checked his external sensors and made a choking sound. 32 degrees is well into the lethal range for 6 species on this team. "Right, I forget sometimes that you folks are more sensitive to temperature," Cole said. She did not sound particularly concerned. "Well, follow me. We'll start with a walk through the residential district." They stepped outside and Thexus felt his entire understanding of reality shift. Across the street, human children played in a park. Small children, fragile-looking ones who could not have been more than a few years old, ran and laughed and climbed on playground equipment. Above them, the sky churned with dark clouds. Lightning arced between tall metal towers that seemed designed to attract the deadly bolts. The thunder was constant and deafening. A human female sat on a bench reading a book. She wore a simple dress and sandals. Her feet were bare except for those thin sandals. She occasionally looked up to check on the children, then went back to her book as if sitting in an electrical storm was perfectly normal. "That's Helen Price," Cole explained. "She runs the primary school here. Came from Earth about 8 years ago with her husband and 3 kids. She said Earth was getting too crowded." "Too crowded?" Thexus repeated weakly. "Not too safe. Too crowded." They walked through the city streets and every moment brought fresh impossibilities. Construction workers moved massive steel beams without powered exoskeletons. In this gravity, those beams should have required mechanical assistance, but the humans lifted and positioned them using only their muscles and simple tools. An older human male named Thomas Webb waved at them from a construction site. His hair was white and his face deeply lined with age. He carried a piece of equipment that Thexus estimated weighed at least 80 kilograms in this gravity. "Morning, Captain Cole," Webb called out. "These the council inspectors?" "They are indeed, Tom. How's the expansion coming?" "Right on schedule. Should have the new terminal finished by next month." Webb hefted the equipment onto his shoulder and headed toward the building. "You folks enjoy your visit now." Thexus watched the elderly human walk away carrying a load that would have required a cargo robot on any civilized world. "How old is he?" he asked. "Tom? I think he's 63 standard years," Cole replied. "He jokes that the work keeps him young." They reached a market area where farmers sold their produce. A human male named Jack Morrison was loading sacks of grain onto a transport vehicle. Each sack had markings indicating it weighed 100 kilograms. In this gravity, that meant actual weight of 140 kilograms. Morrison picked up the sacks one-handed and tossed them into the vehicle while discussing prices with a customer. Dr. Rex Lynn approached cautiously and scanned the grain with his portable analyzer. His tentacles jerked back in alarm. "This plant produces compounds that are highly toxic to standard galactic biology. How can you possibly eat this?" Morrison looked surprised. "Toxic? Nah, it's perfectly safe. Makes great bread. Got a bit of a spicy kick to it, which is nice. My daughter and grows the sweeter variety down in the South Valley if you want something milder." A warning siren began to wail across the city. It was a low, steady sound that made Thexus's scales stand on end. "Seismic activity detected," Cole said, checking her datapad. "Looks like a moderate one. 6.3 magnitude estimated. We should find some open ground away from buildings." Moderate, Thexus thought in horror. 6.3 was catastrophic. It would level cities and kill thousands. The ground began to shake. Thexus fell to his knees despite his best efforts to stay upright. The world moved under him like water, rolling in waves that defied all logic. Buildings swayed like trees in wind. He could hear the groan of stressed materials and the crash of objects falling inside structures. The humans around them simply stopped what they were doing and waited. Some held onto walls or railings. Others just stood with their feet spread wide for balance. Nobody screamed. Nobody ran. They waited patiently like people waiting for a rain shower to pass. The shaking lasted nearly a minute, though it felt like an hour to Thexus. When it finally stopped, the building settled back into place with barely any visible damage. Humans emerged from doorways, looked around, checked on their neighbors, and then went back to whatever they had been doing before. Helen Price, the teacher from the park, brushed some dust off her dress and returned to her bench. The children went back to playing as if nothing had happened. An elderly woman walking past with a shopping bag shook her head and muttered to her companion, "Barely felt that one. Not even a proper shake." Thexus remained on his knees in the street, his environmental suit's sensors screaming warnings that the area was unsafe. Around him, humans continued their daily lives on a planet that should have killed them all 1,000 times over. Captain Cole offered him a hand up. "You all right, Commander?" "That was a pretty mild one, but I know it can be startling if you're not used to it." Thexus looked at her extended hand and realized he was seeing something unprecedented in galactic history. These humans were not just surviving the impossible. They were comfortable with it. The inspection team's fourth day on New Queensland took them to the mining operations on the northern plateau. Commander Thexus had thought he was becoming accustomed to the constant impossibilities, but the mines proved him wrong. The transport vehicle bounced over rough terrain that would have destroyed most standard vehicles. Captain Cole drove with one hand on the controls while pointing out local landmarks with the other. Through the reinforced windows, Thexus could see massive creatures in the distance, moving through the forest like walking mountains. "Those are what we call spike-backs," Cole explained. "Herbivores, mostly peaceful unless you get between a mother and her young. We've learned to give them plenty of space." Dr. Rexlin's voice came through the communication system, tight with stress. "Captain, my sensors indicate one of those creatures masses over 15 tons and has natural armor plating 30 centimeters thick. How is that mostly peaceful?" Cole shrugged. "They don't hunt humans. That makes them peaceful in my book." The mining site sprawled across a valley rich with rare earth elements. Humans operated heavy machinery, drilling deep into the ground and hauling up ore that glittered with valuable minerals. The site supervisor, a broad-shouldered man named William Grant, met them at the entrance. "Welcome to Site 7, Grant said, shaking hands with Cole. "We're running a bit behind schedule today. Had a pack of hunters move through the area last night and they damaged some equipment." "Hunters?" Thexus asked nervously. "Big predators. Apex species. They hunt in groups of 3 to 5 usually." Grant pointed to a piece of machinery that had deep gouges raked across its metal surface. "One of them got curious about the drill last night. We had to fire some warning shots to scare them off." Warning shots, Thexus thought. To scare off creatures that could tear through industrial machinery. Grant led them on a tour of the facility, explaining the mining process. As they walked along a ridge overlooking the main excavation pit, a warning alarm began chirping on Grant's belt. He stopped and held up a hand for silence. "We've got movement," he said quietly, looking at his scanner. "Big signature. Coming from the eastern tree line." Thexus felt his blood run cold. Through the trees, something massive was moving toward them. He could hear the crack of breaking branches and the heavy thud of footsteps. The inspection team huddled together, their environmental suits suddenly feeling very thin and inadequate. The creature that emerged from the forest was beyond anything Thexus had imagined. It stood nearly 12 meters tall on 4 massive legs. Its body was covered in overlapping plates of natural armor that looked harder than starship hull plating. Long spikes ran down its spine, and its head featured a mouth full of teeth the size of his arm. Most terrifying were its eyes, intelligent eyes that focused on the group with clear awareness. The inspection team froze. Thexus could not move, could not breathe. This was death incarnate, a creature from nightmares made real. William Grant sighed with obvious annoyance. He pulled a large weapon from his belt, aimed it into the air and fired. The shot cracked like thunder across the valley. "Get out of here!" Grant shouted at the creature, waving his arms. "Go on. This is a work zone. Out." The massive predator paused, its head tilting slightly as it regarded Grant. The man stood his ground, barely reaching the creature's knee in height, and shouted again. "I said get out. We've got work to do. Go find somewhere else to hunt." For a long moment nothing happened. Thexus was certain they were about to witness Grant being torn apart. Then, incredibly, the creature turned and lumbered back into the forest. Within moments, it had disappeared into the trees. Grant holstered his weapon and turned back to the group. "Sorry about that. Those big ones wander through here sometimes. They're mostly just curious, but they can damage the equipment if we let them get too close." Dr. Rexlin's tentacles were trembling. You shouted at it. You shouted at an apex predator that could have killed you with a single bite." "Well, yeah," Grant said, looking confused. "What else was I supposed to do? We're behind schedule. Can't afford to shut down operations every time one of the local wildlife gets nosy." That evening, back in the safety of the visitor facility, Dr. Rexlin conducted medical examinations of the human colonists. He worked in silence for hours, running test after test, comparing the results to galactic standard biology. Finally, he called Commander Thexus to review the findings. "This is impossible," Rexlin said, his tentacles gesturing at the data displays. The human bone structure is approximately 40% denser than galactic standard. Their muscle fiber composition shows efficiency ratings that exceed our theoretical maximums. Their cardiovascular system operates at pressure levels that would rupture blood vessels in any other species. He pulled up more data. Their immune system is hyperactive, constantly fighting off the local pathogens and toxins without the humans even noticing. I found trace amounts of compounds in their bloodstream that would put a Vreen into toxic shock, and the humans showed no symptoms whatsoever. They're not just surviving here, their bodies are thriving in conditions that should kill them. Thexus studied the data in silence. Their homeworld? Tell me about Earth again. Rexlin accessed the database. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. High gravity at 1.0 standard, which is already elevated compared to most garden worlds. Extreme temperature variations. Frequent geological instability. Atmosphere contains high oxygen levels that are mildly corrosive over time. Indigenous life forms include apex predators, venomous species, and parasitic organisms. And humans evolved there, Thexus said slowly. They evolved on a world that most species would classify as barely survivable. That's correct. But Commander, I've been reviewing human history files that Captain Cole provided. It's not just that they evolved on a harsh world. They actively sought out the harshest parts of that world to live in. They built settlements on volcanic slopes, in frozen wastelands, on active fault lines, in scorching deserts. They didn't do this because they had to. They did it by choice. Rexlin pulled up images of Earth. There's a region called Chernobyl where a massive radiation leak occurred. The area was declared uninhabitable. And yet, I found records of humans choosing to live there, saying it was peaceful and quiet. There are settlements at the bottom of their oceans, on top of their highest mountains, in valleys that see temperatures exceeding 50 degrees. Captain Cole entered the room carrying 3 cups of a steaming human beverage. Thought you might want some coffee. You've been working late. Captain Cole, Thexus said carefully, why did you personally come to New Queensland? Cole sat down and took a sip of her drink. Honestly, Earth was feeling too safe, too comfortable. I spent 10 years in disaster response back home. Earthquakes, floods, volcanic eruptions. I got good at it. When I heard about the colony recruitment for New Queensland, I jumped at the chance. This place has everything. Challenges every day. Real frontier living. It makes you feel alive. She smiled at their shocked expressions. Look, I know it sounds strange to you, but humans aren't built for paradise. We're built for struggle, for overcoming obstacles, for pushing boundaries. A world like this where every day tests you. That's not hell to us. That's home. Commander Thexus stood before the Galactic Council once more, but this time his presentation carried a weight that made the chamber feel smaller. Every representative sat in absolute silence as the data scrolled across the massive displays. Images of humans living casually among dangers that would annihilate entire civilizations. Medical scans showing biological capabilities that defied accepted science. Video footage of children playing in storms that could power cities. Honored members, Thexus began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil, I must revise everything we understand about habitability classifications. Our system was built on the assumption that all intelligent species evolved on worlds similar to our own, gentle garden worlds with stable climates and moderate conditions. We were wrong. He gestured to an image of Ambassador Robert Blake standing in Port Defiance without protective gear, smiling in conditions that would kill most beings in the chamber within minutes. Humans are not an anomaly. They are not using hidden technology. They are simply the product of a world so harsh that it forged them into something we never imagined possible. To them, a Class 15 death world is not a death sentence. It is an opportunity. The chamber erupted in shouting. Council member Drexus, representing the militaristic Corthian Empire, stood with his scales bristling. This is unacceptable. If humans can colonize worlds that no other species can survive on, they will spread unchecked across the galaxy. They could claim entire sectors of space without opposition. They already are, shouted another representative. While we debate, they could be settling a dozen more death worlds. Council Speaker Vorthan's crystalline body flashed bright warning colors, demanding silence. Ambassador Blake, please approach and address these concerns. Robert Blake walked to the central podium with the same calm confidence he always displayed. Beside him came Emma Wright and James Harper. Blake let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. Honored Council, I understand your concerns. But let me ask you a simple question. Do any of you want these worlds? The chamber fell silent. In the 3,000 years since the Galactic Council was formed, How many colony proposals have been submitted for Class 12 or higher worlds? According to your own records, the answer is 0. Not a single species has ever wanted to settle on what you call death worlds because, to you, they truly are places of death. Blake pulled up a star map showing dozens of red-marked planets. These are the Class 12 through 15 worlds within current Council space. 47 planets that are charted, catalogued, and completely ignored because they have no value to anyone. Until now. Emma Wright stepped forward. We propose a treaty. Humans will share all of our environmental adaptation technology with the Council. Our architectural designs that can withstand extreme seismic activity. Our agricultural techniques for hostile environments. Our medical advances that help us resist toxins and disease. Everything we've learned about surviving in harsh conditions becomes available to all member species. In exchange, Blake continued, we ask for unrestricted colonization rights to any world classified as Class 12 or above. Worlds that you don't want and can't use anyway. Council member Drexus spoke again, his voice suspicious. And what happens when you control all these so-called worthless worlds? What happens when you've built a network of colonies in places we cannot follow? James Harper answered, his deep voice carrying easily through the chamber. Then you'll have partners who can go places you cannot. Think about it. Your survey ships encounter extreme environments that limit your exploration. Humans can go there. Your mining operations find valuable resources on hostile worlds that are too expensive to extract. Humans can extract them. Your scientists want to study dangerous phenomena up close. Humans can accompany them. Blake spread his hands in an open gesture. You call them death worlds. We call them real estate. But more than that, we call them opportunities for cooperation. You gain access to resources and knowledge you could never obtain alone. We gain homes on worlds where we can thrive. Everyone benefits. The debate stretched for hours. Some species remained opposed, fearing human expansion. Others saw the logic in Blake's proposal. Why fight over worlds nobody else wanted? Why not benefit from human capabilities instead of fearing them? Finally, Council Speaker Vorthen called for a vote. The chamber filled with lights as representatives cast their decisions. Green for approval. Red for rejection. Yellow for abstention. When the count finished, the result showed 73% approval. The treaty would be ratified. Vorthen's crystalline voice rang out. Let it be recorded that on this date, the Galactic Council officially recognizes humanity's unique adaptation to extreme environments and grants colonization rights to Class 12 and above worlds within Council space. Furthermore, humans agree to share survival technologies and provide extreme environment expertise to all member species. Blake bowed respectfully. The human government accepts these terms. We look forward to a productive partnership. 1 year later, Commander Thexus returned to New Queensland, now officially designated as his permanent posting. The Galactic Council had created a new position, liaison to human frontier colonies, and Thexus had requested the job. His scientific curiosity demanded that he continue studying these remarkable beings. Port Defiance had transformed in just 12 months. The population had swelled to over 100,000. New districts sprawled across the valley. A proper spaceport handled regular traffic from dozens of species coming to trade, study, or simply witness the impossible city. Captain Margaret Cole met him at the landing pad, now promoted to Colonial Administrator. Welcome back, Commander. The city's grown quite a bit since you were last here. They walked through streets that bustled with activity. Human children played in the parks as always, still completely unbothered by the storms raging overhead. But now Thexus noticed something new, young humans who had been born on New Queensland. Cole explained that second-generation colonists showed even better adaptation than their parents. Children born in the higher gravity developed stronger bones and muscles naturally. Their bodies adjusted to the atmospheric pressure from birth. A young girl, perhaps 8 years old, approached them. She had the bright eyes and confident posture of someone completely at home in her environment. Her name was Lucy Harper, and she held something in her hands. Administrator Cole. Lucy called out. Is this one of the council scientists? I wanted to show him this fruit we found growing near the South Ridge. She held out a round, purple fruit that looked innocent enough. Dr. Rexland's words echoed in Thexus's memory about local vegetation being toxic. His suit scanner confirmed it. The fruit contained compounds classified as moderately poisonous to all known galactic biology. It's really sweet. Lucy said enthusiastically. It makes your tongue tingle a little bit, but that's how you know it's perfectly ripe. Do you want to try some? Thexus looked at the innocent smile on the child's face, offering him poison as if it were candy. He politely declined, and Lucy shrugged cheerfully before running off to share the fruit with her friends. Cole watched the girl go with obvious pride. That's what second-generation colonists are like. They don't know any other life. To them this is just normal. They'll grow up thinking lightning storms are background noise and earthquakes are minor inconveniences. That evening, Thexus sat in his new office overlooking the city. He composed his official report to the Galactic Council, choosing his words carefully. Status report: Human Colony New Queensland Year 13. Population now exceeds 100,000 with continued growth projected. Second-generation colonists showing enhanced adaptation to local conditions. Human Council cooperation treaties proceeding successfully with 7 joint research projects currently active. 3 additional Class 15 worlds now under human colonization with similar success rates. He paused, then added a final paragraph. Personal observation: humanity does not survive the impossible. They thrive in it. They seek it out. They build homes in places we consider uninhabitable and raise children who think such places are normal. The galaxy is still learning that our most dangerous worlds are humanity's suburbs. And based on current trends, humans would not have it any other way. Thexus filed the report and looked out at Port Defiance. Lightning danced across the sky. Thunder rolled like drums. Somewhere in the distance, one of the massive predators roared. And below his window, humans walked their streets, lived their lives, and called this impossible place home. The galaxy had been rewritten. The rules had changed. And somehow, impossibly, everyone was better for it.